Eagle Evenings.
Hello, welcome to Eagle Evenings. I'm glad you're back, and I hope you are glad to see our new guest for this episode. Why don't you tell us who you are and a bit about yourself?
Okay, I am Dr. Pamela Jo Francis. I teach English here. In fact, I'm lecturer in English here at LSMSA. Have been since 2013. I have a bachelor's degree in both English and history from a tiny college in Mississippi. I have a master's degree in religious studies from Loyola in New Orleans. And then I have a PhD in English from Rice University in Houston, Texas. Go Owls.
Rice.
Right.
So, you have all these little doctorates and PhDs and whatnots.
Yeah.
Well, you've got
one doctorate and two masters and one bachelor's degree in two subjects.
Okay, all these titles.
Titles.
So why'd you choose to proceed and teach English?
Well, I have to be honest, I majored in both English and history, and I taught both in my first job, which was an alternative high school in Dallas, Texas, which was quite a wild ride. But jobs in history are hard to find, especially if you don't have a PhD. And when I moved to New Orleans, I needed a job, so it was pretty easy to find English teaching English jobs at the community college. So that's what I did. And then after I got my master's in religious studies, I actually wanted to pursue that. But by that time I was married to Greg, and jobs in religious studies are even harder to find than jobs in history. So, and very few schools in the South have those programs. So it was English, and I love English, always have.
You mentioned an alternative school in Dallas. That just reminds me of your teaching past, and I know you taught at local Natchitoches school, St. Mary's.
Yes.
So if you can illuminate a bit on that, and we're not afraid to throw some shade at St. Mary's.
Well, I don't want to be too mean. I really don't. But we moved here from New Orleans, and the Catholic schools in New Orleans were very much about social justice, and they were very integrated. And so when I got the job at St. Mary's, which was kind of like I had to find a job somewhere, so I started teaching there, and I expected it to be like the Catholic schools in New Orleans, and it was not. It was not very Catholic. It was not about social justice at all, and I had to constantly tell kids to quit dissing people on welfare, and it wasn't integrated. And none of those are my values. So it was pretty awful. It was also $12,000 a year, which is, starvation level. And I had a master's degree at that time, but at that point, so I was not happy.
So
in fact, I cried every day. So, just about. Greg would have to pick me up, and I'd be on the front porch of the school, just because it was not happy. It was not a happy time.
you went all the way from New Orleans to Natchitoches?
Well, Greg had gotten a position at Northwestern.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Does he still teach there?
Yes, he does.
Oh my God.
He's in his 28th year.
He's in his arm's length from me at all
That's
times.
right. At all times. That's right. So,
Well, speaking of old Greg, and this reminds me, you talk a lot about your gardening. You like to garden.
I do.
And so, what I want to ask you about your garden, first I want to ask about one specific plant that you seem to have an obsession over, which is beans, specifically the chickpea.
Okay. I don't grow chickpeas. At some point, I would love to grow chickpeas, aka garbanzo beans.
Yes.
Garbanzo beans.
The nickname for all
That's right.
Gothlings and world
Gothlings, but mainly
Globetrotters.
the sophomores. Always my sophomores
The
are,
N110s.
yeah, are little chickpeas or garbanzo beans. And I don't know why, but a few years ago, it just came to me,
In a
to
dream.
say, hello, everybody, how are my little garbanzo beans? And it just seems the thing to do. And I do love garbanzo beans. They make hummus, and hummus is awesome.
It's iconic at this point. It's like if you stop doing it, I think people would think you're replaced.
Really? Oh, it's good to know because nobody ever says hey back. So nobody says, hey, you purple hole pea, or, So I didn't know. So,
Well, you never grown chickpeas, but I know you grow a lot of other things.
I do, yes.
And I know that you also like to enjoy a nice glass of wine on your... I don't know, is it a garden or a farm? Because you've never been specific about the size.
No, it's a garden. It is probably about this room, if y'all know where we are.
We're in 245.
This and a half. So it's like this room plus about a half of this room. And it's all fenced in. And that's it. That's my garden. It was all vegetables at first, but I used to grow flowers, and then I started the vegetable garden. And I like growing vegetables, and it's good to grow vegetables, but I really missed flowers because one of my greatest joys in the world is taking a bouquet to a friend's house. So now I'm growing pretty much half and half.
And this is a little just a wonder I have. You always say, even in your syllabi, that like sometimes I'll be late for class because I'll get stuck behind a cow. You say you live in the middle of nowhere.
I do.
Where's the nearest point of civilization from your limbo house?
Well, the nearest grocery store is 30 miles away. So I literally live in a food desert. There is a Dollar General about 8 miles away. And recently they started selling things like bananas and apples. But before that, you could not find a vegetable of any sort within 30 miles. So my house is literally, okay, you go down a highway that dead ends, okay, but right before the dead end, you turn and there's another dead end sign, and you go down, and before the next dead end sign, there's my house.
So you don't live in the middle of nowhere, you live in the middle of nowhere.
It is outer nowhere. Outer nowhere. Yes, it is.
The bounds of nowhere.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, now I'm thinking about, locations, and when I'm in your world lit class,
Mm-hmm.
and you often talk about places that, like, we'll be talking about Paris, and you'll be like, oh, I love Paris. So, where have you been?
I haven't been to Paris, sadly. But the universe owes me a trip to Paris because I was supposed to go this summer for a conference, but we had to plan the conference in February, and in February, the war with Ukraine had just started. As well as COVID kind of kicked up itself in France again, so we had to cancel that. We did it virtual. So the universe owes me a trip to Paris. I was going to spend 2 weeks in France, rent a car, go to a lot of places. But I haven't traveled nearly as much as I would love to. The past 2 summers, I've gone to New York City, which is awesome. It is the greatest city, one of the greatest cities in the world. But I've been to Greece a couple of times, and Albania, and other parts of the Balkans. The Balkans are pretty remote, and I love it. I love it because it's in Europe, but yet it's not European, and it's sort of between the East and the West, and it's still very undeveloped. So I really, 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 really love that. Been to Austria before. I've been to Israel and Palestine, and
You went on you went like mining or something, right?
not mining. No, I went on an archaeological dig, which is, I think, a lot more fun than mining, and it was really cool. So, yeah. Mining trip. That's just voluntary labor. Yeah. Well, I didn't get paid for the archaeological dig either, but I did get a scholarship to go. So it was really great. I mean, it's hard work and dirty work. I've never been that dirty before or since, but it was awesome. And unlike you think, because my husband thought the same thing, he was like, "Oh, I just imagine you with a paintbrush, just kind of brushing off artifacts." I actually wielded a pickaxe for most of it.
Wielded?
Mm-hmm. I mean, wielded. Yes.
A lot of people don't know this. If you actually go to Dr. Francis's office hours, she will be there waiting for you with a pickaxe. And if you,
that's right.
If you're there to ask for an extension, you're looking at a pickaxe hole in your foot.
I got a pickaxe, man. I got a pickaxe. And don't you dare not check that box. Don't you dare. Pickaxe. So.
Well, actually, I'll give you this opportunity to tell everyone about the box.
Okay. In Word, which you all have, and you have the app, not just the online version, all right? But when you set your spacing on double, as you always do in MLA, you go into line spacing, and then you go into the drop-down menu, and there's a little box underneath where you pick double spacing, and it says, do not add extra space between paragraphs. And you have to check that box. And if you don't, bad things will happen. Pickaxe.
Damnation.
Yeah. Hellfire and damnation.
Both. Double
Both.
whammy.
Double. That's right.
So now we're thinking about these, these satanic fates that await those who don't read the syllabus.
Don't read the syllabus and don't check the box. Yes.
I want to ask. This is my favorite part of every episode.
Okay.
Do you have any framela horror stories that you can share with us?
I do, actually. I have 3 of them.
Oh.
I know. Well, one of them is not a horror story because it actually turned out to be very funny. And one of them's not that scary. I just find it really amusing. A few years ago, I was giving my World Lit final, which you will be taking soon. Yes, that's right. And I think they're pretty challenging, or they should be, right? There's a lot of material there. And so everybody's taking the final. I'm just kind of looking around, making sure everything is okay. And I see this young man sound asleep. Sound asleep. I don't mean like just kind of trying to nod off or what. He was sound asleep. So I had to go over and wake him up, and I still just can't fathom that. Who goes to sleep? Who falls asleep in a final? Seriously, have you ever fallen asleep in a final?
The stress is too much.
That's what I would think, But yes, he fell asleep in my final. So that was a little bizarre. A true horror story, and this one is scary. I'll end with the funny one but the horror story was graduation of 2020. It was in August. It was on the football field. It was horrible. We were so hot. Oh my God, we were so hot. So all the faculties we didn't have to wear a regalia, obviously, because we would have died. Actually, I think we did wear robes.
Wait, this was in August of 2020?
Yes, because we kept kept putting it off, hoping COVID would stop, and we'd be able to have a real graduation. Never happened, right? So finally in August, Dr. Horton was like, we're having graduation. Well, by August, half of the graduates had already gone to college, okay? It was literally 102 degrees. I am not making this up. There's no shade. It's on a football field. All right. Everybody's masked. Everybody's masks were just dripping. It was horrible. Dr. Langford and Dr. Donlin and I had bought those wraparound fans. Have you seen those? They're little fans that you put around your neck. And, they're battery operated, and we had them going full blast, big sunglasses. We were all wearing sunglasses, floppy hats, the whole works, but it was absolutely, totally miserable. We couldn't, like I said, only half the graduates were there. Nobody wanted to be there. I don't think, nobody was excited. Usually graduation's awesome, right? But nobody wanted to be there. It was so hot. We're dripping, right? A couple of students, I think we're all kind of huggy, right? We couldn't hug because of COVID. And then, we were all waiting in the shade, what little shade there was, while we were waiting for everything to begin. Then everybody had to walk, whatever, in the sun to the football field. Fortunately, they let faculty go sit in the stadium, but there was no shade, right? There was no cover whatsoever. So we're all sitting in the stands, dying. And, the students are having to walk across the football field and get their diploma. Like I said, I don't think anybody wanted to be there. It was truly a nightmare. When I got home, all of my clothes were just drenched. It was It was terrible. It was really, really, really terrible. So that was a true horror story, right? And fortunately, that hasn't happened since. And hope it does. Yeah, I hope it doesn't. I have to tell you though a story that's really, really funny. Because it was quite the adventure. I teach modernism, studies in modernism every couple of years, right? And for that class, it's always in the spring, and we always go to Houston to go to a couple of museums, art museums, because modernism is all about art. And Dr. Langford always goes with me, right? She's kind of my travel buddy. She also goes with me to the Gothic picnics, campouts. So anyway, I had to rent a huge van. Okay, we didn't have the school bus or anything like that. So we had a big van and then a small van, not the school van. We had rented both of them because somebody else had all the van. So I'm driving this monster van and seated it seemed like it was like 2 miles long, but it seated 15, 16, 17 people, I don't know. And then Dr. Langford had a regular size van with 5 or 6 people in it. So we're coming into Houston on 59, which is a very, very busy highway, and it's coming into the city. People are going a million miles away, an hour. So I'm driving along, and Dr. Langford is driving along, and all of a sudden this motorcycle pulls up beside her and is just waving, and she's like, what? What's going on? And he's like, that. So finally she was able to figure out that gas was leaking out of the van. So, Madison was with me, Madison, who used to be an SLA here. So she was kind of my co-pilot or whatever. So I have her text, Dr. Langford's texting us. So, I got to pull over. And we're texting back. So we get off the first exit and go to this really, really sketchy looking convenience store, right? So we pull up and I'm like, no, Dr. Langford, park way over there, right? Everybody get out of the van and come over to the convenience store. So, we did, and we had to call the fire department, so the fire department comes. And so we're all standing around in this convenience store parking lot in a, like I said, it was a little
too convenient.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It was too convenient. But we're all standing there. The gas is pouring out of the van, right? So then the fire department shows up, and they start spraying all this stuff on the gasoline so it doesn't burst into flames, right? And so meanwhile, it is about 11:30, okay, in the morning, and we have to get another van, right? So Enterprise, the van place, closes at noon, and we're still outside of Houston, right? So what do we do? So Dr. Langford's like, well, I'll just stay here, and, when you figure it out, call me. And I was like, are you kidding me? No, everybody in the van. So whatever there were of us, 20 altogether, 21, I guess, counting Madison, we are all in the van that I am driving. And I'm like, get in. So we all get in. People are like 3 deep, right? And I am hauling ass, okay? Through Houston. Fortunately, I know Houston fairly well. So I'm driving as fast as I could possibly drive. We get, we called Enterprise. We said, we're on our way, right? We get to Enterprise at like 5 minutes to noon, and they were about to walk out the door. So fortunately, we got another van. And believe it or not, we still managed to do everything we had planned that day. But yes, it was quite the adventure. And we had great fun. The fire department had great fun. They hung out with us for a little while, and because they had to wait to make sure that nothing burst into flames,
right?
And we got our pictures taken with the fire department, and it was a lot of fun, actually. Even though I was immediately thinking, we're going to miss everything. We're just going to have to go rent another van somewhere or spend the night and turn around and come back to Natchitoches. But we made it to everything. Woo! Both museums, Half Price Bookstore, the Vietnamese restaurant, and Rice University. So.
Well, you said that was a lot of fun, but I think as a whole, this interview has been a lot of fun. I'm really good at these segues.
Okay. Yes, you are.
But I just, is there anything you want to say before we close off for today?
Oh my, I didn't think of any parting intelligent words. Let me see.
The pressure is on.
The pressure, yeah, it is. Well, I do hope everybody gets a lot of sleep during their holiday break. Remember to check the box. And Peace and grooviness.
Peace and grooviness.
That's right.
Woo. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you to Dr. Francis. Give it up for Dr. Francis for joining us today. We were so glad.
Give it up.
Woo! The edited in applause.
Okay, that's right. Okay, I'll provide some there. Yes.
Well, and just general thanks to everyone involved. Dr. Francis, you guys for watching. And we'll see you next time, whenever that is, on the next episode. Goodbye.